Hello everyone and welcome to Claret & Booze. My name's Nick. This is my match reaction from today's game. Before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, drop a like on the video because it does really help us. And also head over to the Kent and Sussex Tea and Coffee Company if you haven't already. They're going to be selling our mugs soon. I said this a few weeks ago, but I've been slow on getting them out to them. So that'll be happening in the next few weeks. So get their address saved. It'll be in the description of this video. Keep an eye on their store. And whilst you're there, have a little look at their tea and coffee and all because that's what they do. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, controversy-ridden game today. It really was. A very strange game as well. Now, look, before I get into talking about the game, I want to clear up a few things. After the Freiburg game, you know, most of us came out and identified that that was a very, very different approach to us playing football. That was met with a lot of sneering on Twitter, you know, none more so than David Moyes after the post-match interview where he said, "We always do that. We always do that." Well, no, you don't. For a start, you played players in their correct positions. You played with a striker up front. You played with Lucas Paqueta in the 10. You chose not to carry James Ward-Prowse in case we got a set piece. So that meant we had 11 players on the field that were all functional. You know, we had two wingers on the wings. We had a really solid midfield. Therefore, everyone had a better game. We were playing further up the pitch. Now, people point to possession stats. Now, I'll always say we're never ever going to dominate possession because David Moyes does not coach a passing game. So we're never going to dominate possession. But in terms of your intent on the pitch, that can be identified by the player's positioning. And the fact of the matter is, more often than not, what happens is players in a West Ham team, we start slow, we sit back, we don't move. There's no passing and moving. We don't press. There's no pressing. That's why it's called a low block, because you don't press until they're near your 18-yard box. And that's what David Moyes prides himself on. What we saw against Freiburg was completely different. We had players right up on the edge of their 18-yard box when they was trying to play out. We was press. Even Alvarez at times, he was so advanced. He was kind of next to Antonio trying to press. Completely different mentality. And we saw the benefits. We saw the rewards. All the players benefited from it. The fans enjoyed watching it. And surprisingly, we started the game today against Villa in the same vein, something which I did not anticipate. Now, before we get started on this game, I didn't think we'd win. If you'd have offered me a point before the game, I would have taken it because I thought that I just anticipated that David Moyes would revert back immediately. But then there was also an argument to say, well, how could he? After that, on Thursday night, how could he revert back? Well, he didn't. He started with the same starting lineup, and we started on the front foot. Took us a little while to get into the game. Both teams were a little bit leggy because they both played on Thursday night, so it's understandable. Villa were missing Matty Cash, so they were light in midfield. He's very important to the way that they function in the middle of the park, and that was evident. But our positioning was the same. We were playing higher, we were pressing, and we were forcing mistakes. You know, they weren't just making sloppy passes for the sake of it. They were making sloppy passes under the pressure that we was applying to them in that first half. We was making our own luck. We was forcing errors all the time. And yeah, it was a decent first half. I think we edged it in the first half. I think we were the better team. It was working. You know, we thoroughly deserved to be 1-0 up. We thoroughly deserved it. But like I say, we scored after 29 minutes. Vladimir Soufal had a particularly good game. He had a particularly good game. His deliveries were well on point. I don't think he put in a bad delivery. And the one that he did make in the end, he also had a chance to score as well, where he was kind of screaming for the ball in space over on the right-hand side. And the ball's spilled out to him, and he sort of smashed it towards goal. It got deflected. It was a good effort. But then shortly after that, he picks up the ball on the right-hand side, whips in a beautiful cross to Mikel Antonio, who very brave header as well, low down, but it was very precise and a great header, 1-0. And I think it was deserved at that point. You know, that was just after about half an hour. Yeah, like I said, I think we deserved to be going in 1-0. I was quite pleased and I was quite surprised. I thought, blimey, you know, if we carry on in this vein, we're going to be all right. Because the last thing you want to do against someone like Villa, who like being on the ball, is kind of surrender it to them. We were still being solid. We weren't being gun-ho. But then you could argue we weren't being gun-ho against Freiburg. You know, Moyes is never going to be. He was as gun-ho as he's ever going to be for everything at it. But, yeah, so fast forward to the second half. Now, the second half, the instructions must have just been to just sit and block. Because we hardly moved out of our half. You know, it was a fucking bizarre setup. And Emery kind of obviously made a few changes. He made a few tweaks. He brought on Matty Cash and he brought on Diaby at half-time. But nonetheless, what we was doing was working. And we kind of handed the momentum to them, and they grew and grew and grew into the game. And I could see a goal coming, but it was us that scored first. It was us that scored first. And Antonio from a corner, a Jared Bowen corner, he's whipped it in. And I don't think that one in particular should have been ruled out. In my opinion, that was something to do with. I think it was a goalkeeper being impeded on. But if you look at the replay, I think the goalkeeper's giving it as much to Antonio as the other way around, and that's what he's there for. I don't think he's doing anything bad. So personally, I think that goal should have stood, but it was against the run of play. But this is, I suppose, what David Moyes' game plan was just to sort of sit back and hope for set pieces, because we were quite threatening from set pieces. We had the advantage. I think it was a flawed plan, and so it proved to be flawed. And it carried on. They carried on. They made more changes after that. I think on 63 minutes, they brought on Luca Dean and Zaniolo. Zaniolo, who was eventually their goal scorer, who scored the equaliser. The pressure was ridiculous. I'm going to go back, but we got a tweet through in the 89th minute to say that West Ham have been so defensive in this half. We'd had 2 touches in the opposition box, and that was basically from a corner, whereas Aston Villa had 21. So that was on 89 minutes. So in the second half, that was all we had, and the touches that we had in the box was from a set piece. We weren't getting in there at all, not at all. So yeah, like I say, Emery made those changes. Then he done a really weird thing. So before they scored, he took off our only kind of focal point. Bearing in mind that we're going into an international break now. You know, I don't think Jamaica are playing. So why take off Antonio in 68 minutes? Anyway, he was fine. You know, he was fine. It gives us an outlet. He weren't having his best game, but he'd scored twice. But why take him off to bring Ben Johnson on? So he took off our only focal point and brought a second right back on. He brought a second right back on. It was so fucking bizarre. It was so bizarre. And everyone could see it coming, you know. And it was literally 10 minutes later, because it was wave after wave after wave of attack coming at us. At that point, David Moyes had just consigned himself to, well, look, we'll try and defend it. The worst thing that's going to happen is we'll get a draw here. But we could have gone on and pushed on and won it. And I know we had the disallowed goal. And I know we done this. It's a really weird thing, right, that we're complaining about here, because we went on to almost nick it at the end as well. But why do that? The players themselves were brilliant today. They were phenomenal. They were on it. It was their instructions and their positions on the pitch. They wanted that win. The players wanted it. That, you know, we were defensively really astute. We were fucking brilliant. Paqueta was fantastic today. Don't know. But yeah, Ben Johnson came on. It was a really weird change. He didn't get into the game. Well, what was he going to do? He was just there for he was a second pair of hands for Soufal. And then Zaniolo scores in 79 minutes. Like I said, it was coming. It was coming. It was a bit of a scrappy goal, but they got there in the end. Shortly after that, Alvarez gets his yellow card. That's going to see him suspended now for 2 games. So that's going to be interesting with the upcoming games against Newcastle and Villa, added to the Freiburg one. But I suppose at least we got him for the running. It was always going to come. It was always going to come. You know, I don't know. But then the weirdest of all things, right, as if the answer, it's like, for me, it's like Moyes had a nervous breakdown in that second half. It's like he couldn't cope with it. So he decided to bin the pressing in the first half, and he literally reverted straight back to his fucking low block tactic as quick as he could, because he wanted to try and see it out that way. That failed. We conceded. And then he takes off Lucas Paqueta, who's playing very, very well, and Emerson for James Ward-Prowse and fucking Cresswell. Now, Emerson was doing a defensive fullback job on Bailey. Bailey was doing nothing up until Emerson went off. He was blocking every cross. He was, hello, Thumb again. He was blocking every cross. He was blocking everything. I don't understand why. Because it can't even be for set pieces. Because when James Ward-Prowse is on, you know, Cresswell's never going to take a set piece. So I don't know why he took Emerson off for Cresswell. That didn't make any sense. And taking Paqueta off for James Ward-Prowse. Again, why? Why? It's fucking 1-1. You know, they're pushing for the game. They're pushing for the win. And all he's doing is putting on more defenders. We're at home. We're at home. And we had the opportunity to beat a very under-par Villa. That was not a good Villa team today. They weren't playing well. They were there for the taking. You wouldn't have believed that if you'd have seen it in the second half, but that was because of the way we set up. When you just basically sit back and you invite the opposition on, guess what happens? They'll come on to you. But yeah, it was very frustrating. Fast forward into injury time, 96th minute, we get a free kick, and then James Ward-Prowse whips in a good free kick. A good free kick that gets bundled in. Everyone goes mad. 2-1, goal out of nothing. You know, proper smash and grab. Smash and grab at home when it shouldn't have been the case, but it would have been a smash and grab. 6 minutes or 7 minutes of VAR later, it gets ruled out. It looks like it was the right decision. But if it takes that long, then it's not clear and obvious as far as I'm concerned. You can argue, look, they got to the right decision in the end, but it can't take 6 or 7 minutes. There's got to be a time limit on VAR, for fuck's sake. You can't have it stopping a game to that extent. You can't. I know, look, if you're a Villa fan or whatever, you can see clearly that it did rebound off of... But even then, you can actually see, if you watch that slow-mo, you can see the ball changes direction off of Souček's arm. So what the fuck are they looking for anymore at that point? Why has it got to take 7 minutes? I think it's harsh. Personally, I think it should have stood. But I suppose, look, the rules are the rules. Apparently, if the ball does touch any part of the arm and then goes directly in, then it's got to be ruled out whether it's intentional or not. Whereas the same doesn't apply to penalties. I can't work out the fucking handball rule in the box. It doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, so I think we probably got robbed out of 2 VAR goals, if I'm being honest. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the second half tactical approach was dog shit. Dog shit. And it was unnecessary. We were beating Villa, going toe-to-toe with them in the first half. Why the fuck did he change it? Why did he shit himself and go defensive? Why did he do it? He can't wait. He can't wait to do that. Why have everyone sitting on the edge of their fucking seat for 45 minutes when you don't need to? We posed no threat at all in that second half, apart from 3 moments. 2 set pieces and 1 break where Kudus did get down and expose one of the gaps that they was leaving, because they was leaving gaps all over the place in that second half. He's absolutely... His Conser, I think, he turned him inside out, chopped the ball back to Ward-Prowse, and Matty Cash comes out and blocks it. But you've got to be making more than that at home, more chances than that, I think. Like I said, that wasn't a strong Villa team. They weren't firing. They weren't at all. So, no, look, very frustrating for me. It's good. Like I said, I'm moaning now. We could have got the win, and I would have took the point before the game. So why are you moaning, Nick? Because we could have had more. We could have had the win. It just goes to show you, when you go out and you go toe-to-toe with these teams, you ain't got to be scared of them. You haven't, and we did that in the first half. We went toe-to-toe with them. I don't get the mentality of the man. He just wants to slam the brakes on so quickly. You know, he doesn't want... I don't get it. You know, there was... And we weren't even playing particularly well. Our front line weren't great. You know, Bowen had a really quiet game. Antonio had a quiet game, but had the ball in the net twice. Kudus was... I think he was good. He was good. But I think the midfield was good again. I think Souček, Alvarez and Paqueta worked well. We've got a midfield. Lo and behold, you got a good defence. Mavropanos had a great game as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one. It's a weird one to review. And I was really pissed off at the final whistle, which is why I didn't record it straight away. So sorry about that. I went out and walked the dogs instead and thought I'd better clear my head because I didn't want to come on ranting and raving about a fucking draw. But I was frustrated with it. He just reverts back. He reverted back. Why? Why does he do it? Why does he do it? Anyway, look, that's it from me. We'll be back tonight at 9 o'clock, everyone. Not 8, 9, because Gary's hanging roller blinds in his caravan that he's renting out or something. He's tarting it up. So, look, we'll see you later on. Speak to you all soon. Kevin Edwards.